was ridiculous. It was, I won't go into details, but I woke up, you know, it's the kind of dream where you're like drooling. And I woke up and I was like, ugh, thank goodness this is a dream. Not a good look for the old Mr. King. All right, so we're still talking about honoring the fight, and we didn't honor the fight for a long time, like in terms of science and healthcare. We just didn't really do it. We mostly just kind of sucked it up and drived on. And I talk with people about this a lot. I talked with several people yesterday from 3 different generations of warriors. Vietnam generation, pre-9/11 generation, and then post-9/11 generation. Talked to them all yesterday. And every one of them has this constant thread of, you just got to keep pushing forward. That's what you're trained to do. That's what you know how to do. But it just starts to fall apart. And they keep their armor. The armor stays up the whole time, even when it's falling apart. And as it falls apart and you still hold on to the armor and you don't armor down, it just gets harder and harder and harder. And so my intention for honoring the fight now is to take what we've learned from the veteran warrior experience at war and apply it to the pandemic experience that we're all experiencing at home. So it's a suffering we can all share. And it can support our healing by sharing it. If we stop seeing ourselves as, well, I'm this, and I'm this, and I'm this, and I'm this, and if we stop that, which is part of what makes the military so cool, is you're from here, you look like this, you like that, doesn't matter. When you're in the suck, you're just one team. So that's what we are with this pandemic. We're one team. Or we can be if you choose it. You can keep your armor up and you can maintain this sense of separation. But it's kind of a fruitless endeavor. And we know this from the veteran experience. So you might as well hop on board and start honoring the fight. And here's one way to do it. I'm going to read some from the DSM-5, which is the criteria for PTSD. Thank goodness we have this. I'm going to do a little bit of history on how we got here, because for so long we didn't even look at this as anything more than like just being a weakling or not being tough enough. And so now we have this criteria. It's far from perfect, and how we apply it is far from perfect. But it will give you an idea of what things qualify as, what kind of events qualify as trauma-based events, and how you can kind of see that the things that we've been through are really significant. And it doesn't have to be significant to your story, right? Your story may be, oh, I didn't go through this. They went through that. Those people really had it hard. They went through this. That's all largely garbage. It's all mostly garbage. When you've experienced trauma on a regular basis, the thoughts and the stories that you come up with are largely based around protecting you. And so that's helpful, and you should never discount them. They're only a third useful. They can protect you, but they're not really good at kind of discernment. It's not very good at shifting gears. It's typically you've developed a gear that you can go into high protection or kind of not. And so what you want is high protection, mid protection, low protection, no protection, fully open-hearted, vulnerable, loving, compassion. You want this gear to be able to shift and be flexible all over the place. But in order to get to that, you got to learn how to honor the fight first. All right, so this is the criteria for the DSM-5. Here's number 1. Exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence in or more of the following ways. Directly experiencing the trauma. I talked to a person 2 days ago who directly experienced trauma in the riots during the summer in the Black Lives Matter protests and the riots in downtown Richmond. Witnessing in person the events, the events as it occurred to other people. So you can see someone getting destroyed or beaten, killed. You can see that, and this can trigger it too. Learning that the events occurred to a close family or friend. In cases of actual or threatened death to a family or friend, the events must be violent or accidental. This is a big one. I've often described this as a hole opening up. Here's your life. You witness or experience or hear about it, and all of a sudden there's just this cliff. It just normal, boom. And it's like this huge hole opens up where everything felt kind of normal and predictable. And that hole opens up and you don't know how to close it. Experiencing repeated or extreme exposure to adverse details of traumatic events. Collecting human remains. Police officers repeatedly exposed to details of child abuse. It doesn't apply to movies. It's not television. It's not pictures, unless the exposure is work related. But this is significant. It's the interaction with the darkness. It's the interaction with the opposite of what makes life living. Okay, so whatever the opposite of love and compassion and the things that give life its lift, if you're interacting with the opposite of that, it sucks at you. It pulls at you. It's a real thing. It's not a toughness thing. It's a real thing. It has nothing to do with how tough you are. Let's see. So if there's a dissociative symptoms, so this is experiencing persistent or reoccurrent systems of depersonalization. So this is a sense of like you feel like everything's like in a dream, or it's not a real experience. It all has this disassociated kind of feeling. I don't have as much connection to this. I mean, I've experienced pieces of it, but it's never been persistent. But derealization, so this one is got a lot of drug-related aspects to it. So if you're kind of stuck in this, terrible loop, interacting with, drugs and finding ways to cope that way, that's another thing that's going to develop a, post-traumatic stress as a disorder. That's a tough one. That's, again, worst part about this stuff is they kind of overlap. There's multiple ways that this is expressed. These post-traumatic stress shows up in as unique ways as there are individuals. So the hardest part about this stuff, post-traumatic stress, is it's not simple. It's not like this and this. It's very complex, as complex as human beings are. There's delayed expression, so stuff that can show up 6 months after the event. And what we know from the Iraq War is that it can show up even longer than that, or even further back than that. All right, so here's how it can be expressed. Here's how the armor starts to show up. Avoidance of or efforts to avoid distressing memories. Avoidance of efforts to avoid external reminders. So these are triggers, people, places, conversation, things that kept the memories coming back. When Dr. Bresler Vanderkalk in the book The Body Keeps Score talks about becoming more participatory with the sensational experience, this is precisely what he's talking about. So the more you avoid these feelings in your body, or the more you avoid these thoughts, the more they become powerful, and the more they show up as kind of unbearable sensation. And it gets louder, and it can get so loud that you'll do anything and everything to avoid the feeling. And that's layer upon layer upon layer of armor that you have to go through. and this is a big reason why I'm putting this out now, is you don't want to develop these layers of armor. You want to get this stuff squared away now, developing your team, getting a good handle on this stuff now, so you don't develop these layers later. Negative alterations in cognition and mood associated with the events. So inability to remember, persistent and exaggerated negative beliefs, persistent distorted cognitions of the cause or consequences of the events, blaming yourself, persistent negative emotional states, fear, horror, anger, guilt, and shame, diminished interest in significant activities, feeling detached or estranged from others, is armor. This is what the armor does. Inability to express positive emotions. The guy I was talking to yesterday, he just very matter-of-factly was like, why in the world would I get close to people? You know, it's just silly. Why would I do that? Alterations in arousal and reactivity. Irritable behavior and angry outbursts with little or no provocation. One of the things that I've noticed about myself is that if I've created a lot of armor, or what I noticed about myself in the past was I literally had so much armor that I wouldn't feel anything until it'd be huge. And then when it would be huge, it would be like, I'm feeling something. So even though it was anger and outburst, I almost liked it because it was feeling something. Reckless or self-destructive behavior, again, same kind of thing. You're not feeling regularly. There's no subtlety to feeling. It's all just either nothing or everything. So reckless or self-destructive behavior creates that feeling of aliveness. I talk to so many warriors who use this as a way to feel alive. It's a way to feel, period. Exaggerated startle response. I'll never forget being with a warrior who was coming home, and we were getting mortared, and it was just a loud bang, and he would apologize for like jerking. It's like, man, I'm sorry, my bad. And then the other day, I was talking to this woman about her experience with the riots in Richmond, and every time she hears helicopters, every time she hears loud bangs, every time she hears different sounds associated with that memory, she gets scared. And that fear is something that latches on and stays. Problems with concentration, sleep disturbances. Oh man, I problems with concentration. I don't typically have. I didn't have much of that. I had a lot of it was sleep disturbance, because there's this. It's like a relationship to your brain and a relationship to your body that's all out of whack. And because the levels of communication and connection are all out of whack, it shows up, I think, most obviously in your sleep patterns. It's almost everybody I talk to is all jacked up on sleep. But because, not sleeping, working your butt off, getting it done, all that kind of stuff is kind of culturally acceptable, it's not really seen as the significant thing that it is. So I'll often ask people how they're sleeping, and they'll be like, whatever. It's like, it's not a big deal. I sleep fine, whatever. And I'm just kind of like, okay. Like I said, don't sleep on this. Honor the fight. Like, that's the whole point of honoring the fight. You honor the fight. You get this stuff as part of like, okay, let me be on the lookout for this. And so you don't build all that armor. So that way it's so much easier to armor down. Disturbance causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other areas of functioning. If you're not connecting with yourself and you've got a whole bunch of armor up, it's impossible to connect with other people. It's just not worth it. That's part of what makes the pandemic so tricky. Is like, I want to let my kids hang out with other people. I want to go do stuff with other people. But the experience of doing it in and of itself is fraught with anxiety. And it's like I'm putting myself in an anxious position for what? And that's a way to build armor, to push that down and to act like that's just, you're just being a wimp or you're just overthinking it. That's harmful. Don't do it. If you got to get in, if you got to go in, you got to go in, and you got to do that. That's a whole different category. But if you don't have to, and you're putting yourself through that just because you think you need to or whatever, you don't have to do it. You create armor just to kind of fend off that stuff. Let's see. I think I covered. That's the gist of it. Oh, here's the last piece. Presence of one or more of the following intrusion symptoms associated with the traumatic events beginning after the traumatic events occurred. Reoccurrent, involuntary, intrusive, distressing memories. Gosh, that really showed up for me when I was talking with the woman about the Richmond riots. Those memories are just front and center. And I guarantee you there are people out there that are having really distressing, intrusive memories about loved ones whose funerals they're having on Zoom, watching that take place. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. Reoccurring, distressing dreams in which the content or the effect of the dream are related to the event. Note, in children, that might be frightening dreams without recognizable content. Dissociative reactions, flashbacks, may occur in a continuum. The most extreme impressions, a complete loss of awareness of present surroundings. Intense or prolonged psychological distress at exposure to internal or external cues. Internal or external. So you can create this in your own self. That's massive. Anything that symbolizes or resembles the aspect of the trauma. So think about that. You can imagine, you can tell the story, you can cue yourself into a traumatic response. That's part of where mindfulness plays such a valuable role here. Is that mindful self-awareness. You can say, oh gosh, I'm literally bringing myself into this space. Now, I hope I'm not giving the impression that all this and just fix it. It's just whatever, all you got to do is pay attention to it. That's why it's honor the fight and support the healing. So it's not, this isn't a light switch. This is complex human stuff. So complex. So complex. That's why you got to get on it now. That's why you got to honor this fight. That's why you got to pay attention to this stuff. That's why you got to work on it now. Marked psychological reactions to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic event. Again, internal or external. Internal cues. I mean, you can go into your mind. You can create narratives around everything and everybody. We talk about this a lot as the story. It's just brutal. So, take it serious. Don't worry that it's like, oh, this is just me overreacting or, whatever. Take it serious. The best part about taking it serious is the more serious you take it, the more fully you can start to engage with life. And then what happens is you start to fully engage with life more and more and more. The chances for life to come back to the vibrancy and to the fullness that it once was goes up. So it's a positive. So take it seriously. Honor the fight. Start thinking about this stuff. If any of that, it's called the DSM-5, if any of that resonated with you, go back, look it over, and then start figuring out a plan. Start developing a team that you can use to support the healing. Now, the mindful self-awareness, the stuff we teach with the 4 bells, that's a foundational criteria. Everything out there now, everything has this fundamental element, mindfulness-based self-awareness. Without it, you don't notice this stuff. So you literally can only tell the person or recognize for yourself tiny snippets of what's actually going on. And so you really want to develop this skill set. So with that, let's do some training. I'm going to do it quick because I know I've been talking for a while, so we'll go through this one. We'll go through this fast. All right, so let's do first bell. Light and shadow. Just go ahead and look around where you are, noticing light and shadow. Tame the mind. Checking any sounds that are showing up. Let's move that. Okay, go into the alignment of your body. Feel what's beneath you. Notice your ground. Notice your rear end. Maybe move it around a little bit. Notice your core. Heart space. Throat. Top of the head. Get taller by 1 millimeter. Relax your face, jaw. Throw a little smile on there. Bell 3. Start by taking a really full inhale and exhale. In your next round, just notice the location of where your breath starts and the parts where you can tell it's ended, where you can't breathe anymore. Just notice the location of the breath. Next round of big inhale and exhale. Notice the speed. Notice the speed. And just speed it up just a hair. So just speed it up just a tiny bit so it goes in a little bit faster than normal. Notice how you can control that. You can kind of influence it. That is mindful awareness. That's self-awareness right there. So you can see that awareness in the way that you can speed up or slow down your breath. So now inhale fast, exhale slow. Notice how you can control that. And then you can kind of ask yourself, well, what is that that's controlling that? So take it in quick, let it out slow. You're the chooser. You're the one that's in control. Okay, now go ahead and make your breath really small. So just a small inhale, small exhale. Again, notice its location. How deep in your body is it? Where do you feel it? Do you feel it more towards the skin, the outer layers, or do you feel it more in the depths, the deep part of your body? Guys, see you here. Now, when you're ready, go ahead and breathe that small breath out one time, real big. Try to feel the body expand in all directions, and then let the breath settle back to its normal pattern. Fourth bell. What are you grateful for? When I say the word gratitude, what shows up in your mind? And it might be something that's kind of off to the side. Like when I said gratitude, the first thing that popped into my mind on the right, kind of the right bottom of my mind's eye, was the name Alina, my wife. That just popped up. The second I say her name, both my kids pop up. It just pops up. Now, it doesn't always pop up, and sometimes you got to work at it a little bit. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a guy in the back of the room. He's like, what if you got nothing to be grateful for? And I said some things, and he was like, I can be grateful for my dog. So maybe it's an animal. Maybe it's an object. Maybe it's a vehicle. Maybe it's a job. What are you grateful for? Zoom in on it. It's hope realized. It's grace. Show a little appreciation for it. Imagine it's something that kind of warms your heart. Imagine your heart getting warmer. And then when you're ready, who do you know? Maybe it's just you. Maybe you want to keep it in. But maybe it's someone out there who's struggling. Maybe it's people that are having a hard time. And if you could, and in your imagination, imagine you can, send some of this warm-heartedness out to them through an invisible string. Just imagine that string shooting out at the speed of light, connecting to their heart, and then imagine with your thoughts and with your intentions, sending that warm-hearted feeling to them. Finish the practice by taking 2 breaths, and the second exhale completes the training. All right. Good job. Honor the fight. Support the healing. See you tomorrow.